MREA presents the Rise Up podcast.
Thank you to our event sponsor, MEJ's. When you're in the mood for a hot cup of delicious coffee, come to MEJ's Coffee House. They roast their own beans weekly, and every cup is made to order, so you can count on getting full flavor in every sip. All of their coffee is fair trade and organic. Learn more at me-j's-coffee.square.site. Visit one of their central Wisconsin locations or grab a cup at the 2024 Energy Fair.
Welcome back to the Rise Up podcast. And today we are joined by Matt Penniman. He's the Communications and Advocacy Director for the League of Michigan Bicyclists. He started at the League in 2018. His advocacy extends to promoting riding safety and illustrating the broader community benefits of increased bicycle usage. As a member of the League, he champions the importance of bicycling and creating a healthier, more connected community and advocating for bicycle-friendly policies at the state capitol. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Nick, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're going to talk about bikes. We're going to talk about electric bikes. But first, maybe tell us about the League of Michigan Bicyclists.
League of Michigan Bicyclists has been around since 1981, so a little more than 40 years now. We're the statewide advocacy organization working to improve life through bicycling. So really, we believe that bicycling makes life better and that there are lots of ways that you can improve your life through bicycling, whether that's by biking to run your errands, biking with your kids, biking on long meditative excursions for like a week-long vacation. We organize a few tours that are like that, one up in the Upper Peninsula called MUP, and then one called Shoreline that's along the coast of Lake Michigan. And this year we're doing Lake Huron as well. We're going from Alpena up to Mackinac, and then down to Traverse City. They are a ton of fun. MUP and Shoreline. I rode the support van for Shoreline last year and got to drive around and meet people and just hear their stories of how much fun they were having on the ride. And then every night after we got into camp, I got to take my bike out for a spin too and go explore the neighborhood for the cities we were staying in.
Maybe tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to your work at the League of Michigan Bicyclists.
I should also mention we also have a few education programs. We have an online quiz. We have publications, booklets called What Every Michigan Bicyclist Must Know, that's in English, Spanish, and Arabic, and then What Every Young Michigan Bicyclist Must Know, that's just in English right now. And we do classes, including for law enforcement officials, laws relating to bicycling. We do a research project that we're working on right now. Tons of other stuff going on at the League. But as for how I got involved, I grew up riding my bike just around the Detroit suburbs where I grew up, and then up in northern Michigan where I went to high school. I rode out to the house of a girl I was interested in getting to know better and chatted with her. And then I rode all through college as my main transportation. When I started my career, I worked in a few nonprofits. I worked for a marketing communications company, and then found myself kind of wanting to do something that I really believed in instead of just something to pay the bills. And I found this role with the League of Michigan Bicyclists and thought, this is perfect. I've been riding all my life, and now here's a chance to be part of the movement.
Great for you for searching and finding a thing that you love and appreciate. So let's get right to the point here. Why are bicycles important?
Bicycles are important, but calling them important, it's almost saying like they're the whole wheat bread of transportation. They're not the whole wheat bread. They are the frosted buttercream cake of transportation. Bicycles are joyful. They are a fun way to get around, which you can't always say about other modes of transportation. I think bicycles let you get around very efficiently. An e-bike will let you travel for miles and miles on $1 worth of electricity. But besides being efficient, besides being very low emission and very good for the environment, what I really like to stress is that they are part of the social fabric. When you're riding a bike, you can see your neighbor. You can stop and talk to your neighbor. You can enjoy the surroundings, enjoy your community in a way that is a little harder to do from behind a windshield.
Great. Yeah, well said. So that must drive what the League does, of course, this kind of passion and vision for bicycles, like supporting the social fabric, reducing the environmental impact of our transportation. So what are some of the priorities that you and the League work on?
Some of our priorities right now are first making Michigan streets as safe as possible. You may have heard the federal government required every state to complete a vulnerable roadway user assessment, safety assessment last fall. And Michigan did a pretty solid job with the VRU assessment. But as part of that, they came out with a map of the high-risk network where people biking and walking are most likely to be hit and killed. We put that map into Google Maps. We got a hold of the shapefiles. So that's at lmb.org/high risk. And so we're using that map and reaching out to communities to do bike audits right now, and also encouraging folks to look at the speed limits on those high-risk corridors and see if they are perhaps set too high and need to be set lower for the safety of people biking and walking. We also have a few different legislative pieces that we're working on right now as well. Some that are more policy, some that are more budget, but we would like to see our state invest in community bike repair programs, invest in e-bike purchase incentives, pass laws to first put a definition of vulnerable roadway user into the law, and second, to close some gaps in the law when a prosecutor is making a charging decision after someone is hit and seriously injured or killed that's walking or biking. So those VRU bills are making their way through the state legislature right now. There was a hearing last week in the House. There's going to be a hearing later this week in the Senate. We're very hopeful to see movement on those.
So it seems like, of course, there are tensions between all road users, vehicle users, pedestrians, bikes. Would you like to describe some of those tensions and maybe how you address them?
Sure. And I will say that it's never completely straightforward. Everyone has a different perspective on these questions. So this is how I see some of those tensions. One of them is between making space for on-street parking and making space for bike lanes. It's hard to do both well. And people like to have easy, convenient parking spots. The fact is, if you put a bike lane on a road, because those people are going slower and you have an easier time stopping, you're going to attract more business to your small retail business in a commercial corridor. And there have been studies on that showing that when you put a protected bike lane in, you see sales go up along that corridor where the protected bike lane is. So in addition to the struggle over allocating space and what you put that space toward, I think there's also sometimes a little bit of tension around what kind of vehicles people choose to drive. There's been some recent research that shows if you have a higher front end of your vehicle, that increases the risk of death if a pedestrian or bicyclist is hit. For a driver, that higher front end, that bigger vehicle can feel safer, but it's not necessarily safer for the person outside the vehicle. In some ways, that's a choice that everyone has to make for themselves when they go out to buy a vehicle. Are they going to try and maximize their own kind of protection in a crash, or are they going to try and minimize the hazard that their vehicle presents to others? As someone who is often on the road in a bike, I would love to see that those hazards be lower. Often it feels like there are a lot of very high trucks driving around, and if I can't even see the driver through their side window, I don't know if they can see me.
I imagine that's just a few of the tensions. And with technology advancement, that has to have an influence on, for example, the introduction of e-bikes, the number of bike users, the speed of bikes. So what type of trends are you seeing in technology as far as mobility, and how is that impacting some of your work?
Yeah, I think e-bikes are going through a real revolution right now, and it started a few years ago, but it's really ongoing. It seems every month you see some new kinds of models come out, some refinement in the sorts of things you see. Folding e-bikes are much more common than they used to be. Cargo e-bikes, there's more different varieties now that you can more easily find a long-tail cargo e-bike or a front-loader cargo e-bike, something that's going to carry what you need to carry in a stable and realistic fashion. I think e-bikes are the future. I think e-bikes are going to play a much bigger part in our transportation mix than people really give them credit for right now. An e-bike doesn't just make it a little easier to get around while biking, it makes it a lot easier. And it makes it easier to do it without getting sweaty, while carrying kids, while carrying all your groceries. I think as people buy e-bikes and maybe use them for fun, they're also going to find out, hey, I can do a lot of my errands, or I can do my commute on this. And it's a lot more fun than driving.
Yeah, it's interesting because, people might think that e-bikes are relatively new, but they've been around for quite a while. And what we're seeing is as you said, this mainstreaming of electric bike technology into a whole bunch of different forms of bikes. So I guess, when you look at e-bikes and you look at kind of what people are buying and how they're being used, what should a consumer know before purchasing an e-bike?
I think you should first ask yourself how comfortable you are maintaining your own bike. And then if the answer is not very, you should look for a bike shop that you can get your e-bike through. So you have a good place to go for maintenance and service that is going to know how to get the parts they need to work on your e-bike. Now, if the answer is, I've been wrenching on bikes for years, I'm fine taking care of my own stuff, then maybe look at some of the online direct-to-consumer brands that are out there that will ship you an e-bike directly and charge you significantly less for it, but then leave you more on your own to take care of it.
Yeah, that's a great first recommendation. And then what about the battery types or the power drive mechanisms? Are they geared for a specific type of uses? What are the options out there?
Most bikes will be considered Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3. Class 1 will only assist you while you're pedaling, and it'll go up to 20 miles per hour. Anything above that, it won't assist you at all. Class 2 will assist you while you're pedaling, but you can also have a throttle, and you can either use that throttle all the time and not pedal at all and drain your battery pretty fast, or use that to get you started and then continue pedaling from there. Again, Class 2 only goes up to 20 miles an hour. Class 3 will go up to 28 miles an hour, but only assist you while you're pedaling. The first question, I think, is how fast do you want to go? Most of the time, Class 1 and Class 2 are going to be the most popular, but if you have a long distance to commute and you're doing it mostly on roads, being able to go that extra bit of speed may make you a little more comfortable because you don't have as much of a speed differential between you and the cars. Then I think you'll want to look at what kind of mileage estimate the battery is rated for and compare that with what kind of mileage you're going to be going on a daily or weekly basis. Look at whether the battery is removable. If it's not removable, where are you going to be parking and charging it? Look at the wattage of the motor. Most states, in order to be considered an e-bike legally within the legal definition, it has to be 750 watts or less. 250 watts, I think, is the limit in Europe. So you'll see some bikes with a lower power 250 watt motor, some bikes with a medium 500, some bikes with the maximum legal 750 watt, and then some bikes that are out of class that aren't technically e-bikes anymore that have more than 750 watts of power. Often these are intended for off-road use.
Okay, so let's just review. So first, how handy are you with your bike? Buy from a local bike shop, or if not, order whatever you want and fix it yourself. Second, the type that you would like to have and how fast you want to go. It seems like there's generally 3 types. If the battery is removable or not, because as I guess you were insinuating, a lot of times you could park, remove the battery, and bring it in with you to work or home to charge. If not, you'd have to...
Right. You have to be able to charge it where you park it if it's not removable.
Yeah, it seems convenient to remove the battery, of course. And then, beyond that, I guess it's the style of bike, really. I imagine there are all kinds of styles. You had mentioned off-road mountain biking to road biking. And so I guess that leads me to my next question is, you've been around this and an early adopter. What have you seen change and what are you expecting as far as changes in electric bikes?
I've seen the price come down a fair bit as battery technology has advanced. I've seen kind of the mainstream adoption take off. I've seen more variety in form factors, especially the folding form factor did not used to be nearly as common or affordable as it is today.
And is that for kind of bringing on public transport or or transporting or what's the benefit there?
Yeah, the benefit of a folding e-bike is that you can more easily pick it up and carry it, fit it in the trunk of a car, fit it in an apartment, carry it upstairs. So let's say you live in an apartment and you don't have an elevator. Kind of a classic bike frame is going to be really awkward to carry up those stairs every day. If you have a folding e-bike, you can fold it at the bottom of the stairs, take it up, stash it in your apartment, take it back downstairs the next day. No need for a parking space. No need for an outdoor bike rack. That is not going to do you a ton of good if you have 2 kids and you need to take them to school, though. There you might be looking at a cargo e-bike that can carry child seats on the back of it. So it's really, what do you want to be able to do with your e-bike? And what kind of form factor do you need to look for? and accessories to go with it that will enable you to do that.
As you said, you're seeing a lot of different forms, kind of improved battery and range, I imagine. I guess I have two questions. You had referenced this before about kind of the expected range. When you have this, I mean, obviously there's differences in how much you'll pedal or how little you'll pedal in the terrain. How do they estimate range, and have you found it to be relatively accurate based on your riding and what you hear?
It depends on the manufacturer. Some will tell you a different range based on the pedal assist level you're doing. Some will say up to X miles. That up to usually means at the lowest assist level. So if you're not at the lowest assist level, expect it to be less than that. Many e-bikes, though, will give you a watt meter of how many watts you're drawing from the battery at any given moment. And so that will help you kind of determine how fast you're drawing power out of the battery. You also start to develop a kind of intuition of how hard you're riding the battery. A battery isn't exactly like a gas tank. If you're doing full force, full pedal assist, maximum wattage, getting as much as you can from the battery, you might draw a lot out of it and see your battery meter go down to like 2 bars. And then you realize, oh, I have a lot farther to go. Turn it down to the minimum assist and see it creep back up to 3 bars.
It's estimating how much you have left based on your riding.
Right. It's not as straightforward as just drawing it from 100 down to 0. It's more like, how much strength does it have left? Can I give it a rest? Can I eke out a little bit more from this if I baby it along?
And with the modern lithium batteries and controls and the engineering, that can be pretty accurate. I guess the concern, and maybe you can talk about this, is the life of the battery. I'm sure they're quite expensive. And what are you seeing as expected life, battery life, and like a general like battery replacement cost?
Most batteries are rated to last at full capacity around 1,000 cycles, less if you are frequently having it in very hot or cold conditions, are frequently draining it all the way down before charging it again. They are expensive to replace. Battery safety has become more of a priority for manufacturers. There's UL testing that can be done on the battery system, and many places that have e-bike incentives are now requiring UL certification on the battery system to discourage low quality batteries that are sometimes bought secondhand, or from third parties, I should say, from third-party sellers, and they may not be as fire safe as they should be. I would tell folks, even if it's cheaper, don't buy a battery from anyone other than the maker of your bike. Don't go buy a replacement off Amazon just because it's $100 less and think you're getting something completely safe.
Another good recommendation. Thank you for that. And then just for your kind of average commuter e-bike, what kind of cost range are you saying? If I were going to recommend one to my parents who like to ride 5 to 10 miles a day just for exercise and get out, like what cost range are we looking at there?
You're probably looking around $1,000, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But you can get a decent commuter bike for around 1,000. You can get a decent cargo bike for around 1,500 to 2,000. But it depends again what kind you're looking at and where you're looking to get it. If you compare it to even a very affordable used car, it's still a lot less.
Seems like the costs, as you mentioned, have come down, because even just looking a few years ago, the bikes were more expensive than that. So that seems like they are getting more affordable. So I'm going to get back to a point you made about the evolution of forms. And, since it is a mode of electric transportation, and now you're talking about, bike haulers and cargo bikes, how big are we talking here? Are you seeing bigger and bigger bikes? When does a bike not become a bike? Since we're not limited by our own 2 feet anymore, are you kind of seeing an expansion of what we would consider a bike? Are we seeing more than bikes?
Sure. So there are things like electric rickshaws now that are basically an electric tricycle with a passenger bench between the back 2 wheels. I saw one of these online recently. There are cargo vans that are like on an e-bike chassis. So it has 4 wheels, it pedals like an e-bike, it has a motor about an e-bike strength, but it has a cargo box on the back and a little protective hood over the driver and mirrors on the side, like a cargo van. So Yes, there does become a point where it's not really recognizable as a bike anymore, but it's still way lighter than an electric car or truck. So I think this is where the term micromobility comes in handy. This term was coined to talk about electric vehicles that are around the same weight as a person, or maybe at most twice the weight of a person, to contrast that scale, that size range, with the scale of a car or truck.
Yeah, what an interesting time, right? This innovation, and I'm in central Wisconsin, near a town called Stevens Point, and the town has two interesting aspects related to bikes. The first is probably the most well-respected and appreciated asset in the town is a bike trail called the Green Circle Bike Trail. That was a volunteer organization where they mapped out this trail all around the city and got all this private landowner agreement, came to this trail. It is heavily used. Everybody uses it. They love it. There's now a foundation. There's now a local beer named after the trail. And like, what a unifying like community.
I'd love to try that beer sometime.
Yeah. Come and ride the bike trail. It's really fun. But at the same time, probably the most divisive issue over the last 2 years in local politics was the road diet and the addition of bike lanes in the town. So this really interesting kind of like bipolar nature of the bike issue, bikes for recreation, but then like also bikes and now micro mobility more and more in kind of the transportation system. And I'm wondering if you're seeing that more often, if that's an issue that the league is dealing with, kind of this increase in the micro mobility and like the bikes more present in the vehicle space.
Yeah, I think it is an issue we're seeing. And it's a question of, adaptation. Can we adapt a transportation system that's been optimized around cars for so long to be more flexible and to embrace these other modes of transportation as well? I talked to some folks from this group that did work down in New Orleans. They've done work in cities around the country, and they found one of the key messages that helps people wrap their heads around making space for bikes is there will be peace on the road when everyone has a piece of the road. If you set aside dedicated space for bikes, e-bikes, e-trikes, whatever, for that between pedestrian and motor vehicle traffic, that space ensures that there's less conflict between modes, between people biking and walking, between people biking and motor vehicles.
So it seems like now with the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, and even some of the COVID response funds like the CARES Act and other support for communities, that we're kind of at this place where we can reimagine and maybe have the infrastructure investment to make this space that you're describing, this in-between space, this space for this like local mobility, the micro mobility space. Are you seeing that in communities? Are you seeing communities that are really leading the way in this and taking advantage of both this electrification idea and kind of this more pedestrian and bike friendly road usage?
Yeah, I think we are seeing that. The group was City Thread, by the way. I remembered the name. But I definitely think there are communities that are doing that. Ann Arbor here in Michigan has done quite a bit. There are a lot more protected bike lanes in Ann Arbor now than there were 10 years ago. And as a result, it can be a little confusing. But I think as folks get used to it, they'll recognize that, now I have options. Now, if gas prices go up, I can leave the car in the garage and get around on a bike and do what I want to do without having to pay for gas. And that to me is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like that, we're in this time of innovation. Obviously, there's a rising consumer sentiment in electric mobility and e-bikes, much more options, more affordable options. So I guess kind of as my last question, like what you kind of talk about this, but what is your kind of like positive future vision of like bicycles and this, let's use the term micromobility's role in like society, community planning? Is there someone out there that's getting it right?
I think there are countries that are getting it right. Paris comes to mind. Paris has done a ton to make the city more bike friendly, to make it easier to get around the city by bike. I think there are places in the US and Canada that are getting there. Toronto's done a lot. Chicago's doing a lot. But as you start to make steps in that direction and people start to embrace it, they will notice where it's not working yet and they will tell you. So in some cases, the loudness of cycling advocates who are calling attention to the places where it is not safe yet is an early indicator that we're heading in the right direction, that we have enough to support that advocate community that's now telling us what more we need to do. I think my vision is that we will get a lot louder, and that after that will come a time when everyone can use our transportation system safely, and where we do reach that vision zero, where road deaths are extremely rare, where we have a transportation system that generally, as a rule, does not kill people, and that keeps our air clean, and that it gives us joy and pleasure when we get around instead of road rage.
That's a positive vision. Are there any resources that you like to refer people to, or that you like to refer to when it comes to biking or choosing an e-bike, or anything that would help a consumer kind of dig more into this issue?
Bicycling Magazine puts out a great guide to different models. You do have to pay for a subscription to see everything, but in my mind, it's pretty well worth it if you're going to be investing a fair bit in an e-bike. There's also the website Electrek, ELECTREK.co, and Micah Toll is their e-bike reviewer. He writes a ton of great e-bike reviews. As far as other podcasts besides this excellent podcast, I would recommend checking out one called The War on Cars. And the name is a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's a great resource for learning about what's out there and hearing from people who are working on trying to make safer roads happen.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Matt, and good luck in all your efforts. We appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate the opportunity. Have a great day.
We would like to take a moment to thank one of our Megawatt sponsors, Organic Valley. Organic Valley holds themselves to the highest standards and are proud to be one of the few always organic brands. Organic Valley products are sustainably made without the use of toxic pesticides, synthetic hormones, antibiotics, or GMOs. Learn more at organicvalley.coop. Thank you to our event sponsor, Shade Haven. Shade Haven creates serene environments through the use of technology. They believe that the best route to solving problems is through quality and integrity. Their products are designed to last, simple to use, and are user-friendly. As a company, Shade Haven's goal is to provide lasting solutions to consumers. They just happen to build the world's best mobile shade structures. Learn more at shadehaven.net or take a seat under the shade at the 2024 Energy Fair.
The Rise Up Podcast, Season 5, Episode 10, E-Bikes. Special thanks to our guest, Matt Penniman, hosted by Nick Hyla and produced by Kyle Galloway. Made possible with support from the Sally Mead Hands Foundation.